Yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather.
Red leather, yellow leather, red leather. The rain in Spain falls mainly on the plain. Hi, welcome to the podcast, the book club of podcasts. I'm Nick Potts.
I'm Emily Potts.
And we drink coffee and talk about the podcast we're listening to.
Yeah. I like that you threw that in there. The book club of podcasts. Got to get that trending.
Yeah, we did it once and kind of stopped, so I'm trying to find an organic way to put it in there, and I don't know if that was the most organic way.
That was great. I mean, I didn't know it was coming, and then I was pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, so maybe the listeners will be pleasantly surprised.
What kind of coffee are you drinking today?
Today I'm drinking a Green Mountain Island coconut coffee.
It sounds so exotic.
I'll tell you what, it smelled really good right when it was made. Definitely had like a beachy vibe for the new summer weather we have going on here. I wish it was iced coffee, but it's not. It smelled great. Doesn't taste fantastic. It actually does taste a little bit like coconut, but it's like a little watery. It's pretty thin, which I don't enjoy.
So are you telling me that you are drinking a flavored coffee that tastes like the flavor it says it is?
Well, let me double check. There's like a hint of it. I think it's the smell that makes it seem like it tastes like it more. But there are some that like you get the hint of it. Like the hazelnut one too. Definitely tastes different than just black coffee. I don't know that it tastes like hazelnut, but it tastes different. So this one's got a little hint of a different taste.
Well, that's great. We're making a breakthrough here in flavored coffee. Look at us go.
Yeah, I'm making a little bit of a breakthrough. What are you drinking?
I am drinking exactly what I said on the last podcast that I would never drink, which is a homemade iced coffee.
Ew, gross.
Here's why. Let me tell you more. So, it's 97 degrees outside right now, and I live in a one-bedroom apartment with no air conditioning. I am not drinking hot coffee. There's just no way.
What's the difference between iced coffee and cold brew?
I think like the long pause because I was thinking. I think the like how long it's steeped for or something. You know, so it has more caffeine, stronger.
Is that true?
This is a wild guess, but it sounds right, doesn't it?
I don't know what the difference is, but I was at Dunkin' Donuts the other day, and I could have gotten iced coffee, but I decided to get a cold brew instead. Mainly because it had the word cold in it, but I don't know the difference.
I mean, it's definitely higher caffeine. Like, cold brew has a higher amount of caffeine than iced coffee, but I think that's just due to, like, how long it has to, like, the coffee has to steep in the water, you know?
Well, then I guess I would go with cold brew every time.
Yeah. Cold brew's great, but it's really strong, so that's why some people just drink iced coffee.
Yeah, I guess, but is it strong compared to an Americano?
It's probably similar.
What? An Americano has espresso in it.
Yeah, but then it has water in it.
Yeah, it's just espresso and water, but what is cold brew coffee?
It's coffee brewed.
Coffee, and that's it.
I don't know, okay? I'll look into it.
Okay, well, I'm pretty pumped to hear what you thought about this podcast, because here's the thing, I knew what I was getting into when I picked it, but I don't think you did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had, well, you know what, now, after that one podcast you picked where you love the people and I hated the people, I just expect that I'm probably either going to love it or hate it. And if it's a person one, I kind of assume they're your kind of people, not my kind of people. But I didn't know who either of these people were. So, yeah, I really had no idea what I was getting into. But do you want to tell the listeners the one you chose and who it had and whatnot?
Yeah, I figured you wouldn't know who they were, they're a pretty big deal actually in some circles. So the podcast was Theo Vaughn's podcast, and it's called This Past Weekend. And Theo Vaughn is a comedian and quite the character. He has no filter. He's very southern, born in Louisiana, and he's just like known for saying ridiculous stuff. A lot of times being race related, and he's not like racist. He doesn't mean anything bad by it, but he's a comedian, so he like makes racial jokes because they're funny. And yeah, so he's an interesting bird. He's got quite the mullet. I don't know if he still does, but for a long time he had a mullet. I think he still does. Yeah, interesting character.
Well, okay, I'm glad you said he's Southern, because I was like, what the heck is this accent I'm listening to the whole time? So that makes more sense now. Second, only sometimes are racial jokes funny, and they're never funny to everyone. So let me just combat that statement real quick. And yeah, I kind of picked up on all of that pretty quickly. Like, this guy's just going to say whatever he wants for the next 2.5 hours.
Yeah, I think a lot of the time, I don't even think he knows what he's saying. He just starts talking and words come out, and eventually a sentence is strung together. But I was really excited to pick this one because of the guest, because I knew where it was going to go with Eddie Bravo, and I thought the mix between Eddie and Theo Vaughn was going to be hilarious, and it was definitely interesting. So Eddie Bravo is a huge name in jiu-jitsu, a huge name in the UFC. He trains a lot of UFC fighters. He's kind of like credited to innovating jiu-jitsu for UFC and like making game plans specifically for MMA. As you heard on the podcast, he makes music too. And the whole reason I picked this one is a big conspiracy theorist, which ends up being hilarious. Yeah, so those are the people that were talking.
Yeah, so this Eddie Bravo guy, was kind of hilarious to me. Like, I liked how the podcast evolved in all of his different, like, facets of life. So we started with his music, which was kind of like, you know, not his thing, but he's really trying to make it his thing, and it's not. And then we go into his fighting, and then we go into his conspiracy theories for like 45 minutes, and he's like, the whole time he's like, I don't like talking about conspiracy theories. It's like, well, we've been doing this for an hour, buddy.
Because people make fun of him so hard and attack him for his conspiracy stuff. Every time he's on Joe Rogan, because him and Joe Rogan are really good friends. So every time he's on there, they always end up getting into some sort of conspiracy talk. And everybody knows how crazy Eddie is. So he's like trying not to talk about it anymore, but once he gets going on it, he just falls into this black hole.
I love conspiracy theories personally. I think they're so fascinating to listen to. So I kind of wish he would have actually talked about anything like concrete in terms of what he believes, instead of just being like, it's so obvious that this didn't happen. It's so obvious. Guys, just look at, like, he didn't give me any information to ever believe anything he says, but I kind of wish he did. Like, I'm sure he's done some research if he's this big of a conspiracy theorist. But in this podcast episode with Theo Vaughn, he provided no concrete evidence for anything he said. So I was just like, you are just nuts.
He has a lot of podcasts where he actually does, like, go through things and try to explain it. He has done a lot of research. People call him Eddie Look Into It Bravo, because he always says, just look into it, bro. Just look into it. If you look into it, you know.
Yeah, he did say that a lot. Although, when he was talking about them, I was like, being Eddie Bravo sounds like high anxiety. Like, he was like, you can't trust anyone. I was just like,
nobody.
Are you just walking around being like, oh, can't trust this, can't trust, like, dude, chill. It's gonna be okay.
Well, this is the funny thing. So, Theo Vaughn, after this podcast, went on to Joe Rogan's podcast, because they're also friends, and they were talking about the podcast Theo just did with Eddie, And he said, after the podcast was over in the bathroom, Eddie came up to him and was like, bro, I gotta kind of like, stay quiet because I think people might be looking for me.
Yeah, he's nuts.
He's super crazy. And the funniest thing, you probably didn't see this, but so Theo Vaughn and Eddie did this podcast, and then Theo Vaughn was on Joe Rogan's, and during this podcast that we listened to, Theo seemed like super interested, like he was kind of on board. He was asking Eddie questions about it, and he was like open to the things Eddie was saying, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. If you don't know Theo Vaughn, you wouldn't know that he was just messing with him the whole time. So he's not into it at all.
Okay, so I kind of got that vibe, but you know who I definitely didn't get that vibe from? The other, producer guy that's working with Theo Vaughn.
The guy behind the camera?
Yeah. He was, super into it and kept trying to ask questions, and no one was listening to him, and I was like, that poor guy wants to talk about it.
To me, I felt like that guy was trying to butter Eddie up because he's a fan of his, either from jiu-jitsu or MMA, and he just wants to be buds with him. That's how I kind of felt, because he,
Yeah, he was, fangirling hard.
Yeah, he was not on board with the flat earther thing, but he was trying to, tell Eddie, yeah, I'm kind of, into it, I just, blah, blah, blah. I think he was just trying to be friends with him.
Yeah. So, the whole basis of all of Eddie Bravo's conspiracies being if it's a science that you can't prove yourself, you shouldn't trust it. I was like, holy shit, that is exhausting. How are you going to go around trying to prove all of these science things for yourself before you decide if you can trust them or not? What? Who has the time for that? This guy.
Yeah, he doesn't believe anything, and he also believes the opposite of things. He thinks anything we're told is usually wrong, and the opposite is true, or it's just a smokescreen for something else that's being covered up.
Yeah. Yeah, it just sounded like, okay, he obviously has some serious trust issues, but I was just like, I can't be you. Your life sounds really exhausting.
So the funny thing is, Theo was I think he was actually being a good host. He wasn't trying to argue with Eddie about any of the stuff. He was just acting interested and asking questions, pretending he was into it. And then he went on to Joe Rogan's podcast, and they were talking about it. And then Theo was like, "Yeah, he's like a deaf Jack Russell." Joe was like, "What? What does that mean? What is it, like a Jack Russell Terrier?" He's like, "Yeah, but why is he deaf?" And Theo's like, "Well, because you can't get him back. Once you open that car door, he just goes, and you can't get him back."
Actually, though, I would agree with that. During the episode, I was getting so annoyed with those kind of things. He would just go on these rants, and it's a 2.5 hour podcast, so you're listening, and I'm just I don't know how we got here from where we started, and I think that Theo Vaughn did a good job as being a host, because he seemed like he wasn't just sitting there hating on his guests the whole time. He was into it and talking to him and having the good conversations. But man, when Eddie Bravo would start going, it was just okay.
Well, after the Joe Rogan podcast, then Theo and Eddie were on another podcast together, and Eddie had heard the Joe Rogan podcast.
Drama in the circle.
He was not happy. He tried to play it off, but he was like, "Man, you called me a deaf Jack Russell, and it was funny. You're a comedian. It was funny, but you were talking shit." And he actually goes, "I want to apologize for assuming that you were interested in that stuff and that you really wanted to know."
I'm just throwing some shade at him. That's so awkward.
Yeah.
I feel like I should listen to the Joe Rogan one now after this.
I think any podcast with Theo Vaughn on it is hilarious because he says the most ridiculous stuff. One podcast he was talking about eating a Vietnamese person. He was like, I was fasting for 4 days, and I was at Best Buy looking at this Vietnamese kid, Ben, and I thought I could eat this kid and no one would really know.
Okay, first of all, I don't understand why you're laughing so hard at that. And second of all, I really like how your statement went from like normal Nick voice to like southern Nick voice in the middle.
It's my Theo Vaughn voice.
So
Yeah, he's pretty funny.
where, like, so I've never heard of him, so clearly I'm not very into the, I don't even know if he's in, like, big comedy circles, because they were, like, hating on the things on Netflix, and I'm like, sounds like you both are just jealous you're not on Netflix, but where would I find some Theo Von stand-up?
That's a good question. YouTube, I think he does have a special on Netflix, but I'm not entirely sure. He's like, I don't know, apparently the comedy scene is really hard to break through, just like any other scene. So he's one of those comedians where the actual comedians say he's one of the best out there, but he just hasn't broken through the mainstream for whatever reason. Yeah.
All right, well, I'll check it out. I also thought when this podcast first started that it was a great segue from our last episode when we talked about the Rockstar movie, and like the first hour was just Eddie Bravo talking about how he always wanted to be a rock star and then just couldn't make it happen.
Yeah, I thought it was hilarious that he said his goal was to move to Hollywood and start dating a stripper who could fund his music dreams.
Yeah, that was like a really weird, I was like, I would never have thought of that, but okay.
Yeah, me neither. But yeah, that was it's interesting. I mean, I guess it's like what we were talking about before, where people will just not let the dream die. Even now, he's still trying to chase music, but
Yeah, he like talked about his YouTube thing, his like album that's on YouTube. I tried to listen to it. I got like 40 seconds in and I was like, nope, sorry dude, can't do it. So it's just not for me, but good for him for keeping trying on it, I guess.
is it not good? What kind of music is it?
I'm not really sure. Like the intro was too long, so I couldn't like wait. Impatient. I needed things to start. And he just has like movie clips playing, so it was very strange. I don't know.
Yeah, he's a fascinating dude. I don't know. Yeah, they covered a lot of ground in this podcast, though. Most of it was the music thing. He seemed a little upset that Theo didn't know anything about the music, or that he would assumed that he stopped playing music.
Yeah, and then at the end he was like, well, at the end I think he like made a good statement about why that probably is, because he was like, people that know me for my jujitsu don't know that I do music, and people that know me for my music don't know that I do jujitsu. And so I don't know, maybe he just plays really well in his single circles, but yeah, it seems like people that know him for one thing don't seem to care about the others.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense too, because a lot of like people in athletics aren't necessarily in the music world, so they don't pay attention to that. There's not a whole lot of crossover there. But yeah, as interesting as he is, Eddie's a legend in the martial arts world. He is ridiculous. Like, this won't mean anything to you, but he, as an unknown jiu-jitsu guy, came out in a tournament and beat Hoyler Gracie, and he's a Gracie, so it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, they kept talking about that dude, and I don't know who that guy is either, so I was like, cool, I don't know him. But everyone
Yeah, just
seems
another
proud.
jiu-jitsu legend. So they did the music thing. They did. Shoot, it didn't go right into the conspiracy thing. I think they just went right into the jiu-jitsu after that, right?
Yeah, they talked a little bit about, I think they talked about like religion for a little bit, and then they went into
That's right, yeah.
the fighting and jujitsu stuff. He was talking
Yeah.
about, so he was talking about something about being like grown up a Catholic or however he was raised, and how he was like really set on like, I don't know, following what he was supposed to be doing all the time, and, you know, being a good Catholic, and he's like, you know, I gotta do it because I gotta get to heaven, and like talking about all that stuff. And the whole time, and then he like, okay, so he talks about that, and then he goes into like, then he realized like, how do we know any of that's ever happening? You can start to get a taste of his like conspiracy theories coming out. And then they talked about how, you know, how like there's like theories about us being in a bubble or about like being in someone else's world. And the whole time I was thinking about that show on Netflix, The Good Place. Have you watched it?
No.
They should watch it, first of all. And you should watch it, too, because it's really funny. But it's just like, it's a show about people going to heaven or hell and, like, this world that they live in. And it's a comedy. It's really funny. But I was just, like, thinking about that and how they should watch the show because they had all these theories about what world we're a part of. And it's too much.
Well, he said the religion thing was, like, his first intro to conspiracies because he said he thought everybody was Catholic, and then he found out he was lied to, that not everybody was Catholic.
Yeah.
I mean, in my opinion, the first hour of this podcast I could do without. It's literally, I just like hearing them talk about the conspiracy stuff, because the stuff he believes is so crazy.
Yeah.
It's so ridiculous.
I can agree with that. I feel like I don't really care about him and his garage bands when he was little because he's not actually like a famous musician. So that part I was just like, please stop talking about this, move on. But the conspiracy theories, I really wish they would have talked more about that. And apparently he hates talking about that, but I think that's the funnier part.
He doesn't believe in gravity. He doesn't believe gravity is a real thing.
And then when they were talking about, he's like, I go to the zoo and I don't go see the monkeys and like feel like I'm at home. like who does when they go see the monkeys? Like,
what?
Because they were talking about like evolution, and I was just like, oh, what a weird statement to make.
Such an idiot. He like bases a lot of his stuff off that feeling. Like, he's like, do you feel like we're hurtling millions of miles per hour in space? Does it feel like we're spinning?
Yeah, because then, to that point, like, they talk a ton about space, and they're like, the speed at which things are moving, like, they're just making up massive numbers. They're saying things like billions and gajillions, and, like, those aren't even real. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, how does he have just, like, a concept of how fast space should move just from thinking it sounds crazy?
He was like, yeah, people say, so you can look that up, man. Scientists have calculated that. But that's not real. That's just a number they wrote down. They just wrote down a number. How do we know that that's real?
And so I kind of appreciate people who challenge some of those things just because it is such a foreign, like, concept to most people. Because, I mean, not a lot of people are, like, working at NASA or scientists or space scientists or anything like that. So it's just, like, this unknown world a little bit. But this guy's, like, challenging a lot of people's life work. So to that point, I'm just like, all right, let's get some facts.
I think of fun when he was on Joe Rogan said, man, I wish I could have fallen into a black hole while he was talking.
Oh, that's so sad, but kind of funny.
Kind of funny, but, like, the whole flat earth thing is insane. Like, I can't believe that anybody believes that at all. And actually, Eddie made a good point. I don't think he made a good point in there might be truth to it, but he was like, how does the flat earth thing have legs at all? Why do anybody believe in it if there's nothing to it?
Yeah.
And, like, it's a good point. How does it have legs at all? But also that it's not a good point in there must be something to it.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, he said that about a lot of things, but it's also like, I feel like that's almost not a good argument because people say things all the time, either to just say the opposite of someone else or to just be like an internet troll that's just out there to cause problems. So I feel like people say things for no reason whatsoever sometimes. And he's just like, why would anyone say it if it didn't have some meaning? Because people do that. I don't know, Eddie.
Yeah, that's very true. And it's also not a good argument to say that people have been talking about the Earth being flat since the 1800s. Yeah, because they were dumb as hell in the 1800s.
Yeah, but then he also says, like, people, like, way before us were way smarter than us. And then it's like, and that's all. I'm like, in what way? What are we missing now? Tell me more, Eddie. I need more.
Yeah, and to be fair, some of the conspiracy theories he's into may have legs. Most of them don't. But like we definitely went to the moon, and Theo was funny. He's like, I met Buzz Aldrin once, and he didn't seem like he'd been to the moon. but but like maybe the 9/11 thing. I think that's more of a mainstream conspiracy theory that it might have been an inside job.
Yeah, I actually think that was like, so that one's pretty fascinating to me too, just like all the research and what people have dug up on that, and I don't really have an opinion on that because I'd like to think that we didn't go to war over something that wasn't real, but I really hated Eddie's comment about that because it was so brief. Like, he was like, well, the 9/11 whole incident was obviously an inside job. Like, just look it up. Like, that one's like proven. And I was just like, no, you can't say that and stop there. Like, no.
Well, you have to listen to one of the Joe Rogan episodes that he was on, because almost the whole episode was him talking about 9/11 and Tower 7 and like it being a controlled demolition and whatever. So I think he didn't want to fall into that trap again. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know enough about it to make a judgment call on that.
Yeah, neither do I. I just thought it was like very, very interesting of him to just be like, well, that one's just obvious. It's like, none of these are obvious. That's why they're conspiracy theories.
Yeah, and I don't know, especially when your mind's on like going different ways with like what websites are legit and what ones are shells set up by the government, and like who's feeding us real and fake information. I don't know. You said it's stressful. It does seem stressful to live that way.
And I feel like he gets so caught up in like the truth of everything and trying to figure it out that he's just kind of counteracting some of his own thoughts. Like, he's constantly saying like, yeah, just look it up, just, whatever. But then he's also like, you can't trust the internet. Like, don't use Google. Like, you can't just search things and find things. And it's like, dude, decide. Are we able to look it up or can we not? I just tell me what you want.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with flip-flopping, but he's flip-flopped the wrong way, in my opinion. Like, he used to be totally against the flat earth thing. He used to think it was ridiculous. And then, I don't know, he looked into it and then and became a flat earther, which is insane. So, I don't know, weird.
Yeah, and I think I like listening to conspiracy theories because sometimes the people just seem so crazy that it's kind of funny. But I don't ever really look into them on my own, so I can't really have opinions about them, but I love listening to all of these things that like you're taught are correct, and then someone else just being like, no, that's wrong, here's what it is, and here's an entirely different view. It's so funny. I don't know, it's like time consuming, and I don't know why he wants to like commit his life to like combating everything he doesn't trust, but I mean, to each their own, I guess.
Yeah, I guess. I think it's I don't know, the weed. I don't know.
Yeah.
It definitely doesn't help.
Yeah, and it's so funny because he talked about how like in the beginning it was like, yeah, no, I never did drugs, didn't do any of that, like didn't get involved in it. And then he was like, later it's like, yeah, I tried weed. You can be anything you want to be on weed. And I was like, All right. Okay, buddy.
Yeah, he's like, I never did drugs. Unless a girl I was trying to hook up with did crystal meth, then I would do that.
Yeah, he's like, then you gotta get on their level. I'm like, that's also not how that works, but okay.
That's I thought it was actually hilarious that Theo Vaughn was like, girls are the gateway drug, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because people say weed's a gateway drug all the time, but it's true. Like, it's a little true. Like, girls will get you to do things. I don't know about crystal meth. I don't think I would ever do crystal meth for a girl.
Yeah, that's
but
a little extreme. I do wish they talked a little bit more. Like, I feel like, I mean, I don't know Eddie Bravo really, but I feel like what he's done with, like, jiu-jitsu and MMA and martial arts seems pretty cool, and he's got a lot of great athletes that he's coached, and I feel like he's just so crazy that like, accomplishment in his life was so small in this podcast because his crazy went running instead of, like, talking about the big accomplishments he's had.
yeah, it's a little unfortunate. Most people don't. Well, I don't know about most people. I haven't listened to a whole lot of podcasts just with Eddie on it, but it seems like most people don't just have him on to talk about jiu-jitsu and stuff. But it also seems like he doesn't necessarily want his life to be only jiu-jitsu. He still seems like he's hanging on to the music thing pretty hard.
Yeah, he's really hanging on to the music thing, and I mean, keep it going if it's a hobby, but man, is he pushing something that no one's picking up on.
Yeah, I think it's okay to have that as a hobby, but like you're in the jiu-jitsu thing. You're pretty much, jiu-jitsu Hall of Fame. So why not just really I don't think there's anything wrong with making that your identity.
Yeah, and he talked a lot about, like, playing different instruments and writing music, and I don't know, he seems like he's a little bit of a control freak, so maybe that's why he can't just let it go.
This is what's interesting to me actually is there's not a lot of crossover in, I would say, like average level athletes being music, but something I've always found really interesting is the crossover between musical ability and talent and athletic ability and talent. Because if you look into it,
Let me just Google it real quick, but I gotta find a trusted source.
if you look into it, a lot of extremely elite level athletes also have musical talent. Almost every Olympian can sing or play an instrument or something or dance, something more creative like that. So like that's always been really fascinating is I don't know if that's a brain thing or like what kind of link there is between athletic and creative talent, but there has to be one because it's too common to be just a coincidence.
Yeah, that's true. That's interesting. I mean, I like to think I'm a really stellar athlete, just, in general, but I have no musical ability, so somehow that got missed on me, but I do.
Weird.
It's so weird, right? But, I mean, the Olympians were really cool. I watched, like, the intros about a lot of the Olympians, and so many of them were, like, amazing athletes, but also, like, played an instrument or could sing, and I was just like, why? Why did they get everything?
Yeah, I wish somebody would do a study on that. I don't know how you would, but some sort of study on that. But there has to be a link. I don't, I don't know if it's like I said, the same part of your brain that makes you good at both, or maybe it's just like the discipline and work ethic you get from an athlete. Being an athlete, you can apply to other areas of your life, and that's what makes them good. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but there's definitely some sort of crossover there.
Maybe we should start a conspiracy theory. We could probably get Eddie on board right away. That Olympic athletes are just genetically modified people created by the government who just have all of the greatest talents of a human. Thoughts?
That might not be true now, but it will be eventually.
It might be in like beta mode right now, you know? You don't know what
It
they
might.
have going on.
You're right. You don't know. They could be, you know, North and South Korea could be a smoke screen for the genetic trials they're doing.
Yeah. Actually, though, while we're creating conspiracy theories, or while I'm creating conspiracy theories, I got another one for you. What do you think of Eddie Bravo is actually, like, hired by the government to make it seem like everything that's going on isn't true and is a lie, just so that people stay interested?
He would jujitsu you for saying that about him.
I don't know first of all, jujitsu is a verb. You can verb that.
You can't. But
You just verbed that. And I
that's
don't know
not
what
true.
that means.
G-Eazy did. G-Eazy verbed it in a song. He said, "Don't get jujitsu'd."
Oh, so you can verb it. Huh.
Apparently.
Well, let him come jujitsu me. But I think that might be true. I think he's just hired to counteract everything the government's doing because the government's like, we got to keep people interested, so.
That's actually an interesting conversation because, like, maybe not him, but, like, do you know who Tom DeLonge is?
No. Should I?
You probably do, but not by name. Tom DeLonge was the guitarist of Blink-182.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I don't know him
And-
by name, but I know Blink-182,
Yeah.
and they had a guitarist.
Yeah, right. And he was the singer of Angels and Airwaves. But he recently started a company called To the Stars, and he claims to be working with high-level government officials, and he's introduced them on stage, and that they are giving him inside information about alien life and UFOs and being visited and stuff. And this company that he started, its goal is to introduce this information, this alien information, this technology information via fictional stories and movies and stuff, and then eventually slowly like show everyone the true nature of it and just get the information out there. And so he's been releasing, like, I don't know, footage of UFOs and like interviews with government officials that claim to work on these projects, and he's got this whole company dedicated to it, and he claims to be working with the government, but nobody knows what's really going on. Nobody knows what his deal is.
This seems like very Eddie Bravo-esque. I feel like he's on the same level of a little kooky there.
We might have to listen to the Joe Rogan podcast that he was on, because if you listen to that, he is batshit crazy. He is obviously out of his mind.
Yeah.
But then, and he's saying all this stuff, and then like a couple weeks later, he comes out with this company, and all this stuff he said on Joe Rogan seems to be true, at least the part about working with government officials and stuff.
Yeah, maybe I'll have to listen to that, because this just sounds a little out there for me.
It's very out there, but it's an interesting conversation because what are the options? Either he's lying and he's not working with government officials, which means these guys he introduced are lying about being government officials, which is not great.
Yeah,
the other
I
option
feel like that's
is,
like has some level of fraud or illegal in some
you
sense.
can't just pretend to be like the former head of the CIA or something. Or he's telling the truth, and these people are real, and what they're saying is real, and it means aliens exist, and we've been visited, and they're going to give us all this information. Or the third option is they're real, the government officials are real, but the information is a lie. So then the government is lying to us about it. So that's not a great option either.
Yeah, and honestly, I mean, none of those options are great, and I have no idea which one would be the most true, and I don't have a guess either, but Yeah, this sounds just as crazy.
This is my theory, actually. I think it's all entertainment. I think Tom DeLonge started this company, and it's not real. It's all for entertainment. It's all playing off people's interest in conspiracy theories and aliens and stuff. And everything they're releasing is just fictional. And
I
yeah,
could
it's a
see
big
that.
entertainment play. The problem with that is, if these government officials are real government officials, now they're getting involved in entertainment and false information, which is weird.
Yeah.
But also could just be a grab for money.
Well, I feel like there has to be, or not has to be, but I feel like somehow there's some slight, maybe, overlap between the government and the entertainment world in general, just because of how influential, like, entertainment is. However, I wouldn't take it to the extreme that Eddie Bravo did, saying that people were killed for some of their beliefs. You know,
Yeah, Eddie Bravo is a huge proponent of being suicided.
Yeah.
He thinks people get suicided.
Which also I don't like that word verbed either. But I was just like, do not do that to people's deaths. What?
Yeah, I don't know. Conspiracy theories are weird because some of it, like, some stuff has happened in the past. Like, the government has, I can't remember what it was called, but this is a well-known fact. The government, like, sunk its own ship and blamed it on another country so they could get involved in a war. So, like, stuff like that happens, but it's hard to know which stuff is real and which stuff is fake.
Yeah. And you could just look it up, but also you can't Google it because you can't trust the Google. So.
Yeah, you can't trust any information
And
out there.
everyone's listening to you. You're being watched. Look out.
Yeah, but the Tom DeLonge thing is interesting especially because the fake alien invasion thing Eddie was talking about.
Oh yeah, that the alien invasion is coming, so we have to become one world to fight them off.
Well, the fake one, yeah. So the idea is that the government is going to stage an alien invasion. Which, if this Tom DeLonge company to the stars is an entertainment company, maybe that's the direction they're gonna eventually be heading. But I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. I mean, I feel like it'd be fascinating if that happened in my lifetime, but who knows?
That's what I said. I said it'd be interesting at least.
Yeah.
A lot of people are worried about, like, the government corruption and them being involved, but I'm like, well, it's interesting. It's
It would be like a movie in real life, so that's cool.
yeah. My biggest question is, why Tom DeLonge? If the government was gonna choose somebody to, like, be the face of this whole project, why Tom DeLonge?
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, because I didn't know his name, I also can't picture what he looks like. But, like, does he have an image that's like, this looks like a guy that would be trustworthy but would also think these things? Or, yeah, like, how do they choose?
He looks like a former punk band member. I don't know. Are there any conspiracy theories you actually believe?
To be honest, I don't know. I think I like listening to them, but I never have strong opinions on them. However, what I would say is that I feel like a lot of conspiracy theories are usually this happened and then this really bad thing happened. So, like, I want to not believe the conspiracy theories because then they're saying that the government or some group of people caused this really bad thing to happen, Like the 9/11 example, or like the people that have conspiracy theories about the Sandy Hook school shooting. Like, all of the end results are very bad things, so I want to not think that someone caused them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's a scary thought. I mean, it's a scary thought thinking that your own government would do something like that. The problem is it has happened in the past. The government has set things up like that. So, like, there's definitely examples out there, but how many recent ones are? I don't think I believe any of the school shootings are conspiracy theories at all.
Yeah, I don't either, and I actually haven't listened to enough of those. I think I I'm not interested in hearing what conspiracy theories people have come up with. Like, people died. I don't know if we need to say it was because of a conspiracy, but I don't think I would believe those either.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. But I'll tell you what, I definitely believe we went to the moon. I definitely believe the world is round. I definitely believe we are moving through space.
I believe in gravity.
I definitely believe in gravity. You know what? There is one that's interesting. I think we went to the moon, but there's a theory that we went to the moon and found a lot more than we were told we found. And like maybe they saw aliens on there, and then that's the reason we haven't been back since then.
Yeah. Which that I could believe, but I also wouldn't hate on them for that. Like, why would you be like, we found some things, but we have no idea what they are, and we have no idea how to figure out what they are, and we have, like, I wouldn't want to publicly share a bunch of information where I have no answers.
Yeah, well, the whole idea of the government hiding information like that from us would be to stop chaos from ensuing, stop like mass panic. Um, People might act differently, knowing that there's other forms of life out there, and also it would kind of destroy religion, organized religion in general.
Yeah. Yeah, it would.
Which is, I mean, to me, it's fine. But a lot of people, it would destroy their lives, and people might, I don't know, have a different view on the way they should act here, because the people who are being good so they could get to heaven might find out there is no heaven, and then they might do some outlandish things. So I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. There's actually a podcast, if we ever want to listen to this, just solely about conspiracy theories. It's kind of funny.
Called?
I think it's called Conspiracy Theories.
Oh.
I'll look.
There's a bunch like that. There's one called Tinfoil Hat.
Mm.
There's one called Conspiracy Farm. Yeah, there's a couple like that. We should do one of those in the future.
Yeah, the one I listen to is called Conspiracy Theories.
Okay.
But I mean, there's tons of them out there.
Yeah, there's a bunch. I feel a little bad that we focused only on the conspiracy part of this podcast.
Whatever. That was the interesting part, Eddie Bravo. You should stick with that if he wants to be all, like, famous and well-known, because the music thing isn't working, and the jiu-jitsu circle isn't big enough. So, hit me with the conspiracy theories.
Yeah, unfortunately, the rest of it just wasn't that, I don't know, interesting, I guess. The music thing would have been interesting if he made it, I think. Because, I mean, the interesting part of that is the same that's interesting in all famous musicians, is he just picked up and moved and just to try to make it, and he was... you know what the other thing is? I forgot that they talked about that he was a comedy writer.
Yeah.
And he wrote for the Man Show. How did he get into that, though? How did he just become a comedy writer?
I feel like that was like a knowing the right people at the right time. Like, he kind of a little bit rode on the tails of Joe Rogan and that.
Yeah, he did say Joe got him that job.
Yeah.
That's kind of neat. I guess he's very, like, multi-talented. Apparently he's good at a lot of different things.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe he just needs to... Well, he doesn't need to do anything. He's pretty famous. He's got plenty of money. He's doing just fine.
He did mention that as well. He has plenty of money, so that's great.
Yeah, he's doing phenomenal. I mean, with all the other stuff is almost irrelevant, because the martial arts thing is doing very well for him. I know he's got a ton of students at his jiu-jitsu gym in LA. They're called 10th Planet, and he's got a bunch of gyms all over, but yeah, he's it's probably one of the most successful jiu-jitsu gyms in the country.
Yeah, which is such an awesome thing. I feel like he didn't talk about that much, but I mean that's a pretty huge accomplishment. And he said he has like hundreds of them across, I don't know, the U.S., the world. I don't know.
Yeah, they're all over the place. There's definitely one in Chicago. I don't know if there's one by you or not. There probably is. They're everywhere. But yeah, he kind of revolutionized that game.
And also he's working for the government and creating conspiracy theories. So yeah, tell everyone you know. That's what's happening.
Yeah, to hide the fact that they're genetically modifying athletes.
Mm-hmm.
Which is really not far off. It really isn't. Like, steroids are still going to be played out, and people are just going to genetically modify themselves, and they're going to be ridiculous super people. You know what's fascinating, though, is that he's not into technology. He's not into, like, artificial intelligence or anything like that. He can care less about that stuff.
Yeah, which I think is kind of weird. Not, like, weird, but, like, the world is so much technology. I feel like he should be fascinated by it.
Yeah, he should be. He was into those DARPA dogs, he said, but that's about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Eddie Bravo, there he is.
It very, what's the word I'm looking for? Extravagant? That's not the word I'm looking for.
Eclectic?
Not flammable. Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Eclectic. It's something like that. Definitely starts with an E, but anyway. This podcast is more about the people in it rather than the content, I think.
Yeah.
It's an interesting mash between the two. Theo Vaughn's got the gift of gab, and Eddie Bravo does too, so. Yeah, anyway, interesting podcast.
Yeah,
Next
week, yeah, I'll choose a podcast. You can check us out, talk to us on all of our different ways of connecting. You can email us at podcafe.contact@gmail.com. Tweet at us. I'm all about the Twitter these days, so @_podcafe. And then you can listen to all of our episodes, search us on YouTube and Spotify, or listen to us directly on thepodcafe.libsyn.com. Think that's covered.
Yeah, we've been finally figured out the iTunes thing.
It's only taken
for review.
weeks, but we got this.
Yeah, I know I said we'd be on it by now, but it's been submitted for review. They said it could take up to 3 weeks, so within the next month, we should be on iTunes.
So, happy Sunday! Stay cool out there in this heat.
Yeah, drink that iced coffee, or that cold brew.
Yeah, that cold brew, or that iced coffee, or those iced Americanos. Whatever way you like it, put some ice in it.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, that could be a slogan. Whatever way you like it, put some ice in it. That was good. That was like a rap song.
Right. Still making progress on the closing line. Yeah, the sign off.
Okay, bye.
All right, see ya.